checkered coordinate map. Okay, we need this map in order to go further. To create a map, a UV coordinate map or a checkered map, we can go in Maya and create this. We can go into Window, Rendering Editors, and go to Hypershade. We go down and click on Checkered. There's how we make a checkered 2D texture within Maya. Now, the bad about this is we can't see surface direction. And surface direction is very important when we're texturing. This works in a pinch, but when we talk about different flowing of texture going from one surface to the next, it doesn't work. Again, works in a pinch if you have to though. So sometimes I will do this one. I will also do the other one when I talk about flowing of textures from one surface to the next. So let's go to Photoshop and just click the magical button at the bottom here. In Photoshop, we start out like this. We're going to make a checkered pattern, and we can always use this forever and always. So let's go to New, and we're going to go to 128 by 128. Okay, this is very small. So 128 pixels, by the way, by 128 pixels. That's often misunderstood. So that's not inches, it's pixels. Now, if we take 128 and divide it by 2, we get, what, 64, which leads us into the power of 2. Okay, we know this by bits. So we got 4-bit, 8-bit, 16-bit, 32-bit. So we're talking about encryption maybe here. We're also can think about like game consoles. We got Atari, we got Coleco, like Nintendo, Super Nintendo. We can think about these in a great deal of ways, but I will say that these are the ones you have to kind of worry about, and only here within the world of CG. Okay? Now, let's take this and divide it in half. Okay, we could do that by going into the Move tool, click and dragging on the ruler. By the way, you can see rulers by clicking here, and we can drag this to 64. You can feel it kind of snap into position at 64, and just plop it down. We could do the same with this 64. So now we've divided this in half, the 128. Again, we're just making a pattern here, so that's how you start out with. Let's go to Marquee. Now that we have those down, you notice it sticks right to that. You can make the checker pattern black and white. I would highly suggest not doing that. I would use dark gray and light gray. Only over time, staring at black and white is really bad for you. Hurt your eyes. Let's go to the Fill tool. By the way, if you click and hold, you get the paint bucket tool right there. Let's do the same over here. Okay, then we'll choose a lighter gray. And the same. Now, when we're doing this in Photoshop, we can dictate surface direction, okay? And the ability to see surface direction comes into play when we have something to look at that can't be flipped. Okay, so what can't be flipped? Well, certain letters, numbers cannot be flipped. So we'll go to the Texture tool, click and drag, and set this to about 36 points. So what's a number that cannot be flipped? Well, 5 is a good number. When you flip 5 upside down, it can look like a 2, but it's really hard to see as a 2. So I use 5 a lot. Over here, we'll make another one. And I would say 7 is also a number that cannot be flipped. When 7 goes upside down, it looks like an L. So there we go. So there's our pattern, 5s and 7s. Again, you can use any number letter. As long as you can keep it within your head that it doesn't flip upside down, you'll be all right. Let's go to the marquee selection tool. Select this and go Edit, Define Pattern. Now, let's say I was making a map, and the map was a 2048 map. And let's go over here to the paint bucket tool, drop this down to pattern, and now drop this down to the 5s and 7s. Alright, it hurts your eyes to look at, but there's a 2048 map. And when we get close, it finally starts to pixelize. But right here, hardly any pixelation occurs. So that pixelation, that's one thing that you're looking at, and the directions of the 5s and 7s is also what you're looking at. And that's what makes this a very powerful texture to own. Same goes to if you made, let's say, one that's 512 by 512. Okay, now we can see that pixelation occurs very quickly, and we can also see the surface direction. Now, when I use this within Maya, I kind of generally use a 512 by 512 only because it's very quick. And then I upscale it later on. So I'm going to just save this out as a 512 by 512. And one of the common ones I use all the time is TGA. But in later workflows, you're going to find that TGA is not compatible with some kind of rendering. So it's good for video games and video game design, but in CG land, I would probably use a TIFF or a ping. Okay. So here, I'm just going to save this out, and I'll go to my texture, type in UV checkered. I don't want layers, so I'll uncheck that. I want none compression, IBM PC, and discard all layer. There we go. So now that leads us to, how do we get this map into Maya? We now know how to make it in Maya. We now know how to make it in Photoshop, and you can see that we can add text in Photoshop. But how do we get it physically in Maya? And that's in the next video.